Well, hi, folks. My name is Dawn Tiura, and I'm President and CEO of Sourcing Industry Group, also known as SIG. And I am so excited today because I'm at GEP Innovate 2023, and with me is Santosh Nair, and we're going to talk about these amazing new developments that you have in your technology. So I'm really excited. You gave a great presentation earlier today. In fact, all the presentations have been spot on. But Quantum is a new release from GEP. Could you share with our audience a little bit about it?
Sure, Dawn. Hi, everyone. I'm Santosh Nair. I'm the Chief Product Officer at GEP. I have been operating at the intersection of procurement and technology for the last 20 years of my career. And as most of you know, GEP has been the predominant market leader in a unified source-to-pay application through GEP Smart for the last 12 to 13 years. And while that application has added a lot of value to all our customers, about 2 or 3 years ago, we decided to embark on a pretty major platform re-architecture. And this is when we saw the advent of Gen AI, low-code applications, industry-specific layers being expected on applications, a growing expectation on user experience. So what we started doing, excuse me, what we started doing was pretty much re-architect the entire application and create a foundational platform around those core tenets. So we leverage Microsoft OpenAI so that AI is manifest throughout all the applications. We have a low-code extensible capability, what that allows us for the platform to have different avatars, if you would. So there are certain layers that we can create for a healthcare client at the front-end level, which is very different from what a industrial manufacturing client would see. There are front-end capabilities that the extensibility offers to our partner community, who can do a ton of self-administration on the application. So that is what GEP Quantum is. It basically powers three of our major applications: GEP Smart for procurement, source-to-pay mostly, GEP Next for supply chain, and GEP Green for sustainability. And all of that is basically powered by GEP Quantum, which we are very excited about.
So Quantum is the foundational layer in between. So when you set out to develop this new technology, what was the client problem you were trying to solve, actually?
So the old version of our application has had a good run, but it was architected almost 12 years ago. And technology has come a long way since then. And one thing you'll notice about all this talk of generative AI is it's very hard to build generative AI on top of legacy applications. It's almost like the challenges with on-prem applications. The reason they move to cloud is there's only so much tweaking you can do with the on-prem application. The same challenge we ran into with our older version of the cloud application. Trying to infuse Gen AI was much more challenging. The underlying data architecture has been completely revamped now to make it much more amenable for a large language model to sit on top of it. We also tried to push a lot of the heavy complexity in the code to the foundational platform. So think of it almost as a core platform that some automotive companies use. And then they build multiple models on top of it. But the core platform, the core drivetrain, the core engineering is sort of at the base. And we wanted to solve that problem. The other problem we wanted to solve was, in the past, when we were trying to upgrade the UX, we were trying to upgrade certain capabilities of industry layers. We were trying to merge procurement and supply chain experiences. It was much harder to do with the older version of the application. Now, in the way that we have re-architected the platform, we can make changes to the user experience on the fly. We can allow a ton of personalization. We can allow for these capabilities to be manifested across procurement and supply chain. We can solve for sustainability, these were issues that we were not thinking of 12 years ago.
Exactly.
And then we are trying to solve them today in a real way.
So are all of your customers now going to be converted over immediately?
So the platform has been under works for the last 2 to 3 years. Any client that signed with GEP in the last 6 or 7 months is already going live on the new version of the application. All the other providers and all the other clients that we have plans to support our older version of the application for the next 5 years. And we are working with them on an upgrade path. We are cognizant that upgrades are not easy. Clients have limited IT resources. They don't want to spend too much time in change management. We think that there's a ton of value in the new application. So we are trying to make the upgrade as seamless as possible.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw your demo of it, or your conversation about it, excuse me, it seems like everybody's going to want that foundation. And the Gen AI, I mean, as much as it has a lot of hype, I think you've done it the right way because everyone else is trying to force fit it into existing applications. And I think the idea of starting with a clean, fresh foundation and building the Gen AI and ML into it was a brilliant way to make sure that it's going to work, for one. And it's not going to be redundant and it's not going to mess up or have to go into all of your other modules. But give the audience an idea of the practical application of AI within here.
Sure. So we try to demystify the hype of Gen AI, right? And what we try to also do is, over the last 25 years of GEP's existence, we have built a pretty good understanding of real business problems across source to pay and supply chain. So we are very aware that category managers are looking for category intelligence on the fly from different sources. We're very aware that legal administrators are trying to ensure compliance in the contract without having to deal with all the challenges to trying to enforce it on the fly. We're very aware of the issues that people run into when they're trying to buy a service which is not on catalog. So what we have tried to do is embed intelligence throughout the application where it makes sense. So in the case of a category manager, they will see real-time cost indices. They will be able to do should cost modeling as they are trying to buy something. A contract administrator, they will be able to see that these are the clauses as they are authoring a contract, which system will do for them. These are the clauses that the supplier has proposed, which are problematic, they don't comply. Here is a recommended alternative, and all that is being done, all that work is being done for the user. So we are pulling from all the different sources in the platform. We always had the benefit of having a unified procurement application. What we have now done is extended that for unified procurement, supply chain, and sustainability. So all this information is made available to those users, and even beyond procurement and supply chain, for instance, we are working with some of our customers to do forecast collaboration with the suppliers. So the same forecast is converted to orders and order collaboration, which is part of P2P. So we see this convergence happening of areas adjacent to procurement where intelligence can play a role, but we actually help these end user communities do their job better, make procurement a bit more touchless, make category management a bit more intelligent.
I love that. So when we think about the procurement role, and we're close to the end of the year, we're going to be going into 2024, how do you think procurement's role is going to evolve, it should evolve, and needs to evolve too?
Yeah, I think procurement has been, as a function, I think has been in need of a shot in the arm for a few years, to be honest, because we have been talking about the same technologies for a long time. And the last big disruptive technology that procurement had, I think, was cloud applications moving from on-prem to cloud. And that's, I think since then, there's been a few duds with blockchain and a few others didn't really take off. Gen AI has a lot of potential. And it's best used in cases where there is a large amount of data. There are patterns in that data. There is information to be exchanged with other partners in the ecosystem. And what better place than procurement to do that? So I think there's going to be a clear separation of companies that can use this capability in the right way for the right scope, convince their stakeholders within the organization to adopt it responsibly, smartly, but show some results, deliver tangible business value. And those companies that do it, they will truly start doing the role of procurement wherein they become orchestrators. They sort of fade into the background. Right, they are actually getting involved in strategic conversations around investments, innovation, ROI, and the others who are behind, I fear it'll continue to be an aspiration for them, but they will get stuck in operational day-to-day issues. And I think 2024 is going to be the year that separates the leaders from the laggards very, very clearly.
So I had the most interesting conversation at lunch, and so you talked about how if you're going to build out a contract, it's going to recommend the clauses that you put in it. And this person, and I won't mention the company, because it came and said, I think all of this AI is making people dumber. They don't have to think about their contract clauses. It just feeds it. I said, what about the fact that not everyone knows the right contract clauses and they have to be trained, or you have to have an attorney review it? What about the fact that you can make an average person do their job better and reduce risk by using technology? And he said, oh, but it's not going to free them up, and people are going to see this as eliminating jobs. I said, we have a dwindling workforce. when the baby boomers all are tried out of the system, there's a huge gap, and we're not replacing those bodies. And so we have to do more with less. We have to identify risk, and we have to use AI and everything else we can to make sure that we're doing the best procurement we possibly can for our organization. And as soon as all of the sustainability rules and regulations start hitting in the United States, North America is going to wake up. Mm-hmm. This is not an option anymore. So how are you going to add that to your already very full plate if you don't use technology? So it's been a long time since I've had a conversation about how technology dumbs you down, and I don't mean any offense if that's your belief, but I really think instead what it does is it upskills everyone by giving them skill sets. They don't have to go to school and learn and become a lawyer. They don't have to spend years knowing your terms and conditions. And if a term and condition changes because of regulations, gosh, I can use AI and see every contract that's at risk. So how do you address someone like that? Because I literally was stumped at some point.
So that's one concern I've heard. The other concern also, I'm sure I address both of them. The other one I've heard is around safety, right, ethics, transparency on the use of AI. There are companies that have said, we won't use ChatGPT, right? It's okay for the public domain, not for our domain. Now, in both cases, in both of those arguments, the first with the safety and transparency, I think there is no choice. This is a bit like safety in a manufacturing plant. It's a bit like cybersecurity. There are governing laws and bodies coming up. And we'll have to keep watching it for its evolution. But all these structures are being put in place. Microsoft is a very big company. Microsoft is a business-oriented company. They are not a consumer-focused company in a big way. Look at the way they are using and embracing OpenAI, right, in the workforce in a smart way. And to the other argument about making people dumber, I would say, let's take the example of automotives, which I used to explain the platform. But let's look at automotives from a consumer standpoint. So about 10 years ago, you look at the way cars used to be sold and marketed, and now. And if you demystify the hype around, we used to talk of flying cars and driverless taxis. That's the same thing with AI. You skip all that, but look at practical ways in automotives have made life easier. So you look at comfort, convenience, safety. Would someone argue that, okay, I don't need this rear view camera anymore, or I don't need this certain parking assistance? There are some cars that have features now around, if you have a teenage driver, you can preset this maximum speed, all of which makes a lot of sense. None of that has taken away from the experience of driving. People still go on road trips, they still enjoy driving, but all these things have augmented the experience, made it better, made it safer. I think the exact same thing is going to happen with AI and all digital tools. There are all the people who are involved in the procurement and supply chain ecosystem. They are looking to be empowered. They want to do their job better, easier. Most of them, pretty much all of them, I think, want to do the right thing, abide by the policies. It's just too darn hard to do it, right? Because data is messy, your processes are complex. AI is going to help them do it, right? In the right way, in the right context. So I don't see that as a excuse me. I don't see that as a stumbling block. If anything, I think AI is going to help us with user adoption, user empowerment, user experience, and ultimately deliver the business value. If once again used the right way, used in practical applications, and walking away from the hype and myth of the extremes that it's going to take away jobs and have a very terrible impact, or even this overhyped positive impact that it's going to be a silver bullet to everything. I think both of them are a bit extreme. I think somewhere in between, it has very, very powerful potential to the procurement community and the users if applied the right way.
So when you're looking for patterns with the AI, are you looking at only like a company's data? Are you looking for patterns just within their organization? Or does it learn and pick up patterns from the entire ecosystem of GEP? So
at this moment, we have set up guardrails to protect client confidentiality. So we stay within the realm of a client's data. What we have plans to do is mask the data and get client permission to use that for a broader ecosystem, whereby the language model can learn much faster. Ultimately, our vision is to have a LLM that has the procurement context. So it understands, unlike just ChatGPT, our model will understand what does a contract mean, or what does account coding on an invoice mean, right? What does supplier master mean? Now, with that context and that training, the moment it sits on top of a client's data, it is able to find a lot more patterns and give those insights very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And we are able to showcase that through our GEP Quantum application in very real ways. And that's what is very exciting.
Yeah, I think that is so exciting, especially if you can mask the data and if I can pick up a pattern earlier in the cycle. And I think especially if we ever face another pandemic, and we're certainly talking about supply chain all the time right now, if we can start to pick up patterns from everyone's data, we can start to see where there might be shortages, or there might be country-specific issues or geopolitical issues that are affecting everyone, and we're just not all aware of it yet. But I love the idea of a huge data lake that can be mined for these patterns.
No, so this data lake, to your point on supply chain disruptions, what we are also building on the application layer is a multi-enterprise collaborative network. And what I mean by that is the supply chains are complex. There are multiple parties involved in the supply chain, between logistics providers to payment processors, right, to tier 2 supplier. And all these enterprises are sort of touching the same transaction. And right from someone requesting something to moving all the way to the very end, fulfilling the transaction, bringing it back. And right now that transaction sits in very different systems and even beyond source to pay. And that's where we see the convergence of procurement and supply chain. The risk continues to grow because of lack of visibility of who's doing what in that long chain of actors. And if all that can be in one database and the system is basically able to track the transaction from cradle to grave, that is where you stop the challenge of visibility. That is where you start controlling risk much better. Now you infuse that visibility with risk data, right, from different places. You can see what is the financial health of this particular supplier. You look at what is going on geopolitically in this region. You look at transit times for ocean freight in some cases. Now that gives you a control tower of sorts, and you become almost like an air traffic controller, right? You're sort of seeing that, and then you're directing traffic very clearly with all that info at your disposal, as opposed to chasing and fighting fires. That is what we intend to do. We are doing it very successfully with some of you in the room today, and that is where we see our growth.
So I love the fact that you have a supply chain specific, I don't know if you call it module, but a supply chain specific, because source to pay is good, but that's only the front end. And it's cradle to grave or womb to tomb that really makes a difference, because just because I get it here and I get it paid and I get it into a warehouse or into a factory, there's still so much going on with that same product through the end of life cycle. So I love that you guys have come together and focused on the supply chain side of it as well.
So in the past, you have seen this at SIG. There has been this debate on best of breed applications versus unified platforms. And there's a school of thought that let's pick and choose the best sourcing application out there, the best CLM application out there, and so on, and try to stitch it together. The challenge with that approach is exactly what you called out now, that it's an end-to-end transaction and an end-to-end life cycle. And you want to be able to see that flow. The category management doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
That is going to result in some sourcing. The sourcing has to result in a contract. You are buying off the contract. The moment you separate the P2P from the contract, you're not able to buy from the contract. P2P doesn't end either, because P2P, you're receiving something, fine. That is going to a warehouse that you have to manage that inventory. You have to collaborate with the supplier on that order. So you start seeing that all of it is connected, right? Including payments and discounts, and the ability to then collaborate with the supplier on their capacity, optimize that particular capacity. So we have seen this this end-to-end cycle with so many customers, and we continue to be big advocates of the idea that if you have that end-to-end journey, we create a digital twin of that real world transaction on the GEP platform, on GEP Quantum. We embed all of that intelligence in one data layer. That ideally should solve a lot of the visibility and risk problems that customers see.
You know, I had an analyst, a really close analyst friend, Jason Bush, the other day posted a post on LinkedIn. He said, what if, you know, some experts say that we've got about a 10% chance of getting into World War III. And he said, so what would you need to do? Well, one, you need to know all your supply chain, and you need to know where your supply lines are coming, and how is it being transmitted, and from what country, through which waters, through, you know, he just asked a series of like 10 questions. And then really the summary was, shouldn't you all know that now? And we don't until we're pressed to do it. So with this kind of platform, it excites me, because this is exactly what we should know. But we don't. But we only do it when we have a time of panic, like a pandemic. Then we suddenly wake up and say, "I need to know all this stuff," and we should know it right now, really.
No, so I don't know about World War III, and Jason's very smart, but I think there are some big macroeconomic factors that are building up, right? And there's a decoupling. I call them the 4Ds. There's a decoupling from China, which has been going on for the last several years, will continue, and more companies and countries are figuring out alternate supply chain options. There is this great decarbonization effort,
right,
which is tied to sustainability, and companies are figuring out how do we start doing it for real? How do we make real inroads on that? And there is the aspect of demography, which I feel that the workforce, to your point earlier, is changing. And you want to attract newer talent into the workforce. And the final digitization, that to get all this done, you need platform, you need to leverage technologies that actually will solve these problems. So I think supply chains are going to become a big issue again. I do agree. I don't think it's the pandemic that's going to cause it. It is going to be all these other factors and the geopolitical conflicts. And
yes,
at which point, visibility is going to become the number one thing. And if a lot of us in the room, we continue to point to the same challenges we have had with data, or it's just so hard to get that sort of information, then we'll be at a disadvantage. The ones who take advantage of platforms like this, the ones who take advantage of what Gen AI offers to us in terms of cleaning up data, getting that visibility, those companies will have a real advantage in the coming few years.
Yeah, and just something that we should all be able to relate to, especially since we're sitting in Texas and they've had one of the hottest summers they've ever had. If you believe that climate change is happening, we're going to suddenly have to reroute some of our supply lines. We're going to have to relocate some of our supply lines. We're going to have, China had an issue with drought, and their water, which produced a lot of electricity, was down over the summer. So we're going to have drought issues. If nothing else, if you don't believe in any geopolitical or any kind of other kinds of reasons to look at your supply chain, climate alone around the world is changing, and we're going to have visibility into that. So is that also a type of risk that you're looking at, like big storms coming, suddenly a cyclone, a once in a 100-year event? Is that type of risk also looked at?
Absolutely. And the way to forecast these risks, so what we have a solution called the supply chain control tower. And what it allows for us to aggregate risk from different sources across all nodes of your supply chain. A big aspect of that is these black swan events that are hard to predict. But there is a statistical way to look at, what is the likelihood? Now, it's possible the likelihood is low, but the impact is very high.
Right.
And in those cases, what the solution does is it pinpoints those vulnerabilities in the supply chain. And there is an expectation that the category manager, the supply chain user, they take some action to solve that particular problem, otherwise it's beeping red. Now, it's very hard to do that in the absence of that kind of a technology base. But once you have it, you very systematically and methodically start addressing all these vulnerabilities in the supply chain, which we are very excited about. There's a lot of people in the room here who are using this solution, and we think it's going to be a game changer.
It's a game changer, because those who aren't using the technology are going to be left, not to be crude, but they're going to be left behind. They're going to be fired as a result. There'll be job loss because of it, and companies can go bankrupt because of it. So I think it's about time that we started getting that visibility. We've always talked about end-to-end, and so I'm thrilled about that. Now, I have not seen GEP Green in action, and I understand there's going to be a keynote on that tomorrow. Is that true?
That is correct. So GEP Green is it basically is a third pillar in our suite of applications, and it gives you a sense of how big a topic we think sustainability is, because we are almost positioning it at the same level as procurement and supply chain, and sustainability is a third big pillar of it. It's of course interwoven, but what we have found is while there's a lot of talk and aspiration to do better on that front, in reality, companies are struggling to make headway. And what we are trying to focus on is use some of our core strengths, these capabilities I mentioned earlier, that we can get visibility into the node of the supply chain. We can use AI to identify risk. We can profile a supplier very deeply. We use that to collaborate with all the suppliers in the chain to understand what they are doing, assign them targets, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, and work with them to say that all of it sort of adds up. It's very similar to risk in that your risk is a sum total of the risk of all the nodes in the supply chain. The same logic, I would say, applies to your sustainability outcomes, in that your sustainability outcomes would be the sum total of what everyone in the node is doing in trying to serve you. So we are using some of these core platform capabilities to do things like assign targets, work with these suppliers to look at certain templates on how much emissions are they contributing, what are their ways to offset it. A lot of you who are in this room today would be aware that for every single attendee, we worked with a nonprofit to plant 14 trees in Tanzania.
Trees. I know, I'm so excited.
Which is a small way of us showing that we are super serious about GEP Green. We think there's a huge market that is untapped as well. We think it makes smart business sense. So yeah, it's a big part of GEP Quantum.
Well, I'm really excited for the SIG members who will be able to listen to this recording or watching it live to learn about GEP Green, because I had not been aware of it. And I'm so excited to hear that that's a new pillar that's been announced as well. So I think we're running out of time, but I've so enjoyed my time with you.
Thank you very much, Dawn. Had a great time talking to you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.